Hey everyone, it's Mandy Gibbons here, and I'm here with Matt from the Man Cave. And I'm super excited to be talking to you today, Matt, because I've been having a look at the website and the work that the Man Cave have been doing and seeing your social media posts for a little while. And yeah, just super excited to share your own personal journey, but also some of the work of what the Man Cave is doing. So if you would sort of like to explain a little bit, introduce yourself a bit, but also explain what your role is in regards to the Man Cave. And then I want to dig deeper into your own personal journey, which I'm super excited about. So,
All right, that's a good place to start. So I'm head of impact at the Man Cave, and I'm an organizational psychologist. I used to work in corporate consulting and checked out of that about 4 years ago to do more meaningful work and started at the Man Cave. So we started in 2014, basically creating spaces for young men to take off the mask, to feel safe for the first time, and to talk openly about what's really going on in their lives with each other, and to do that with healthy male role models that can hold that space for them and can take them through rites of passage where they can grow and learn and start to explore the questions and topics they always wish they could, but haven't been given the space, the permission, or the tools to do it with. So we've now worked with almost 40,000 young men across Australia, and those are full day programs. Really, they're not surface level. We go deep with them, and we go into how they're feeling in their emotions, expressing that with each other, how they're feeling in their relationships with each other, the kind of man they want to become, their values, their strengths. And we basically work with boys from year 7 to year 10 in high schools for a full day. So, yeah, it's been pretty incredible. I'd say our success has very much been down to having amazing facilitators. We've got, I mean, I was one of the first facilitators to join. We've now got 35 across a couple of states, and they're just incredible. They're incredible for different versions of masculinity that the boys can relate to at the different schools we work at. So, yeah, that's the brief introduction.
that's awesome. And I've taken a look at some of your team members and so forth, and seeing the conversations, like the video feedback and so forth from the teams that you have helped. And what a crucial age, right, to be supporting them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we thought back to our time at school, and there was not really anyone or anything that taught us how to actually be a man, how to talk about what was going on in our lives. And then we also looked at the statistics. And when you look at the statistics, there's often a dip for young men around the age of 16 in their mental health. And really, what we started to put that down to from the research and then from our own observations is they're faced with all of these challenges that they're often facing for the first time, whether it's sex, alcohol, parties, pressure at school, whether they're after trying to achieve in sport or music or drama or whatever their pursuit is, but no one's guiding them how to actually navigate these complex things. Add to that, then you've got, often you've got absent fathers who are working long hours to try and support their families. You've often got, more broken up families as well. So you don't have that support unit at home. It all adds up. And so working with the boys in high school to not just address their individual mindsets and attitudes and give them tools, but also address the collective culture and make sure that we can positively impact how they relate to each other early on in their high school career.
Yeah, yeah. That
Dare I call
and
that?
how nice for them, right, to be able to have to feel that camaraderie, and to also be able to uh, feel like they've got people that, especially if they don't have many like positive male role models in their life, that they can like speak to and feel super comfortable doing that, because that's a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know what your high school experience was like, but in the end for me, it was there was one or two uncles that I got along really well with. There was one or two cousins. I had a few sports coaches. Those were the guys that showed me, how to relate. It wasn't necessarily my teachers in the classroom. And it's also just different versions, I grew up in a pretty well-to-do suburb in Melbourne. I'm now living in Brunswick, which is a very different kind of place to live. And it's really refreshing to be in an environment where there's lots of multiculturalism, lots of diversity, and to go, oh, Melbourne's alive. It's very different to where I grew up. So yeah, I think it's important, like no matter where the boys are, that they get exposed to that. Um, and they love it. I mean, our facilitators share their stories. Most of them have their own stories of lived experiences of mental health challenges or, just challenges around who they are as a man. So the facilitators get to go on a really beautiful journey as well of making sense of their high school experience and then sharing that back with the boys. Um, so it's a very wholesome sort of work, really, and it's very, we really look for guys that are ready to serve young men instead of serving themselves through this work. So we have an amazing group of facilitators on our team as well.
And that says a lot about them as a person to be open to doing that, right? Because you've got to be
Yeah,
kind of grounded in yourself to be able to do that, and to be very comfortable with yourself at the same time, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I was thinking about this the other day. I think the two times I'm most nervous about getting dressed is when I'm about to go on a date or I'm about to go into a man cave workshop.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, all right, I better like my sneaker sock game better be on point today, or I'm gonna get torn to shreds. And it's funny because the boys that often like they're not looking for you to like have the perfect sneaker sock combo, but they're testing. They're testing you, and they do test us, and they're kind of testing to see like how safe is this really? Like I know you guys are saying all these things, but are we actually going to go there or not? And those early stages, and I think this is like a good bit just for teenage boys in general, is they're always testing. They're always testing for safety. They're testing to see, do you actually mean what you say you're saying? And are you going to stay here through these conversations, as tough as they might get? And we kind of just really make an effort to meet them where they're at and explore the resistance we might be seeing in front of us. And then naturally, as they realize we're not actually there to lecture them. And I think this is a good learning we've had that expands out to parenting, to education and teachers, to just generally how you relate to people, not just teenage boys.
Yeah.
But as they see that we're okay taking have taken the Mickey out of ourselves, they go, oh, okay, I get it now. You guys are actually here. We're gonna have a good time. We're gonna play and we're gonna explore the full range of masculinity. We're gonna play and have fun and have a bit of banter, but we're also gonna go deep. We're also gonna have the deep conversation. I think that's the beautiful thing about what's possible within masculinity is that range,
Yeah.
and we get to explore that with them.
That's exciting. And I guess too, like that, you're always going to have those, there's always going to be kids at different levels. Like you're going to have some that are sort of like more the bully type, who's hurting inside, going through a lot, but no one really knows what's going on, so they're not sharing. And then you've got the kids that are sort of maybe being bullied, and then you've got the kids in between, and it's like this, like when no one really understands each other, it's hard to connect, right? And to be caring and have compassion, and to even find some common ground to create a friendship when everyone is defensive and closed up and trying to hide who they really are.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. And I was running a program recently at a school, and we were doing a check-in circle in the middle of the workshop where we have the boys in a circle and we frame it up and say, like, this is a chance for you to check in. No one's going to interrupt you when you say, Matt, checking in. That space is yours to say whatever you want to say, to feel whatever you need to feel. And the group's just going to listen. And when you're finished, you say checked in. And then there might be some questions or some observations, but there's no advice giving and there's no rescuing. And the boys love it because they're free to just say what they want to say or need to say without being interrupted. And in this workshop, I was sitting next to this boy, Scott, and he was the captain of the year level. He had all the badges on his blazer. He was, a prefect, and he was doing all the right things. And this boy opposite us started checking in about having anxiety during COVID and during lockdowns and needing to go onto antidepressants, and how his parents were really worried about him and how hard it had been just being at home, being locked up. And I just felt Scott next to me like start getting a bit anxious. Well, this would be interesting. And then he goes, I'll check in next. He said, Scott checking in. And he looks at the kid across the circle, and they're clearly not friends and not connected. They're very different social circles. And he's like, I hadn't really ever talked about this, but just because you talked about it, I'm going to, which is I've also got anxiety. I've also been seeing a psychologist. It's been really hard. And I've not shared it with anyone in the year level because I'm worried about how it's going to be perceived because I'm a captain and I'm a leader. But yeah, thank you for giving me the permission to share it. And I really feel connected to you, checked in. And then they exchanged across the circle. They said, yeah, man, thanks. Like, I'm here for you no matter what. And he's like, yeah, me too. I'm here to support you. And that kind of connection between boys in the same year level at a school is what can change the
Yeah.
culture. And also, those two boys now, they realize they're not the only ones going through that. They are going through the same thing. They can support each other. Um, yeah, it's really special, some of the moments we get to witness.
You can tell how you feel about it just by the way you talk about it, right? You can even see the look on your face. I actually got goosebumps while you were talking about it. So
Yeah, it's really special. Um, I remember being in my first man cave workshop 4 or 5 years ago and listening to these young men talk openly. It was giving me goosebumps at the time. I was thinking, how do we scale this? Like, how do we get more boys, more people going through this work? It's so special. And at the fundamental end of it, it's also so simple. But it goes against so much of how we think we need to address the problems we're facing. So yeah, I think it's really special. I find it really precious.
it is, it's awesome. So I'd like to know how you sort of transitioned into this type of work from where you were, right? Because you have your own personal journey. And so, to move into this type of work to where you were, there's got to be something in your life that says, right, like something soul based, right? That you feel um, that inspires you or reaches out to you to this is what I want to bring more of into my life.
Yeah, there is. So, I would say the two things that really happened. Like I grew up with a lot of opportunities. Like I got to go scuba diving with my dad all the time and out camping, and then, with my mum, living in a really nice area, and I was really lucky. Um, when I finished school, I did a gap year and did that whole rite of passage and sort of got out of Australia and wanted to see what the world had, and that was incredible. But when I got back, I remember I was working for World Vision and wanting to, impact the world. But I found myself in Chadstone's shopping centre in Melbourne, trying to get children sponsored on a Sunday morning. And it wasn't quite what I had imagined. So I kept exploring a few things. And by that stage, I started studying psychology and really decided I wanted to become an organizational psychologist. But the challenge with that was it meant that I was just almost in more and more sterile environments where we were talking about the science and the research, and I wanted to get out and get into the mess of it and the dirtiness of it, and be doing group work where things are getting a bit messy. So two things kind of happened. The first one was I did a trip to Mount Everest base camp, which was one of many trips I did in my 20s. And on that trip, unfortunately, one of the guys in our group passed away from a heart attack the night before we were due to go to base camp itself. So we'd been trekking for 7 days, and we woke up one of the mornings to just some of our friends just mourning what we didn't know at that time, mourning his death. We were just told he was sick. So we finished the climb to base camp that day. I called my mum from Mount Everest base camp and had a nip of whiskey with one of my best mates. And the next day we found out he'd died. And I remember getting back from that trip, just realizing how fragile I really was. And his name was Matt as well. And we were from the same part of Melbourne. And he was a father of 3 daughters. And I was just thinking, wow, what am I doing with my life? I can't, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I need to be fully satisfied with it. And it needs to not be about money or status or anything like that. It needs to be about how I bring my passions to the world. So that was the start of the slippery slope out of, I'd say, the straighty 180 corporate mortgage marriage sort of dynamic. And then, yeah, I sort of went into corporate consulting. I was working in the city in Melbourne. I was caught up in that world and really enjoying it, but was just looking at the clients I was about to start working with, and I just thought I can't just keep helping big business make more money. There's got to be something more here. And I did a trip up to Bright, which is where my family's from. They're from Mount Beauty, Wodonga, Bright area. And I went and visited my granddad's grave for the first time in my adult life with
Wow.
my partner at the time.
Yeah.
And he's buried in this beautiful place called Tawonga Gap or Happy Valley. And I just took 15 minutes with him by myself in the rain. And I remember just talking to him and I was like, hey, like it's me. And the significance of it was that in that valley, he had taken his life um, when my mum was 3. And he was in the Air Force. He'd been to Japan. He'd served there and seen some pretty nasty things. He'd come back to this beautiful part of Victoria, couldn't handle what he'd seen, and took his life
Yeah.
in that same location where he was buried. And it's the first time I realized that suicide was in my family. And it was the first time I realized that the opportunity I had with the man cave was to change that. Um, and so when I got back, it was probably another 12 months, but I started to look into the social impact space. I started to look into the not-for-profit space. I started to explore things. I ended up I ended up at an event that was for female entrepreneurs. Now I thought it was in support of female entrepreneurs. It turns out it was exclusively for female entrepreneurs. So I ended up at this event with 50 women and just me. Thankfully, I had some friends there, and that was when I met Hunter, who was one of the founders of Man Cave, and I got referred to him by a friend there and met with Hunter. And once I heard about the work, and I really loved how it was strengths based and focused on prevention. Yeah, I was kind of in after that, and there was a few things that happened along the way that tipped me over to finally resign after 6 months in corporate. But there's been a few. It's been a personal journey alongside the professional at the same time, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
That's so awesome. And what was the connection like then when you first like caught up with Hunter? Like, because usually when you're preparing, like you're ready, right? You were already looking, and quite often you can meet someone like that, and there's just like this thing that happens straight away where you just go, I've got a good gut feeling about this,
Yeah, yeah. um, yeah, I mean, I remember we first caught up, we caught up at a place called Feast of Merit in Melbourne, which was very much a not-for-profit hotspot in Melbourne at that point. And I remember I'd come out of the city, I was dressed in a suit with a woolen coat and doing the whole corporate thing. And I rolled into this cafe and Hunter was wearing a t-shirt and a Patagonia vest and just seemed so relaxed and happy. I was like, what the hell is this guy doing with his life? Like, how do I get this? And I was kind of annoyed at him, to be honest. I was like, I'm actually angry at you because I've tried so hard to get to where I am and I'm still feels like it's not enough. We had an amazing coffee. We spoke for a couple of hours and we realized we were very similar in our life story. He'd grown up in Sydney, I grew up in Melbourne, but in terms of the challenges we'd faced as men, it was very similar. And I said, what can we do next? And he said, why don't you catch up with Jamin, who's one of the other founders? So I caught up with Jamin a few weeks later. That went really well as well. He was a totally different kind of guy. And he gave me, I said, what else can I do? And he said, he took me to the boot of his car, Swan Street. And it was packed to the brim because he was about to go run a retreat with Hunter. And I was so jealous. I was like, oh, this is the kind of stuff I want to be doing. And he opened the box and he said, read this book. And the box was full of these books. And it was Arna Rubinstein's book, The Making of Men, which some of your listeners might know. It feels like you might know that book as well. And so I read that book and I just devoured it in a couple of days. And I emailed Hunter a few weeks later. I was like, hey, I know a lot of people come into this space saying that they want to do work in this space, but I'm serious. Like, I really see a need for this. I really want to be involved. Here's what I think we can do together. And then I did a short-term contract, went into corporate. Hunter got an award from the Queen, and there I was sitting at my desk in my high-rise building, looking at Hunter shaking hands with the Queen. And I was thinking to myself, I was having coffee with this guy last week, and now he's at Buckingham Palace. What am I doing? Like, I got to get out of here. I got to get involved in this. And I mean, as they say, the rest is kind of history. That was 4 or 5 years ago now. There was 3 of us at the very beginning, 3 or 4 of us. We've now got over 50 people in the team, payroll and facilitators, and I'm dialing in from our podcast studio that is yet to be set up. But yeah, it's really grown the last couple of years. We've just got to built it as we've gone as well.
Yeah, like you can tell, like it's just like the energy that you have about this is just like oozing out of you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel alive,
Yeah.
and I actually almost left Man Cave last year to go back into corporate because I was about to turn 30, felt like I wasn't making enough money. I was about to get engaged, and I was sort of trying to get all these things in line before I turned 30. And I look at it now and I realize I was trying to just assert some control back onto my life. Felt like I wasn't alive. I'd been doing Ironman triathlons as a way to try and discover myself again, and that was very momentary in terms of the relief I got from the pain and the discomfort I was in emotionally. Um, and then, yeah, I just remember this feeling of being, I just want to be alive. I just want to feel alive. I don't care how much money I have. I don't care who I'm with. And that was really confronting moment in my life because that meant I was actually stayed at Man Cave. The relationship I was in, I realized it wasn't the right relationship to be in for me. And so we finished that up just before we were about to get engaged. And just went down this 18-month path, which is still kind of going on, looking at all the things I've been avoiding for the last 30 years. And the result of that now is, I guess, what you're seeing. I'm happy, I'm embodied, I feel aligned with things, and I doesn't feel like I'm hiding from myself anymore. And now I get to work with the Man Cave and also coach men on the side as well and facilitate retreats for men to help them look at everything they're avoiding and realize that, yeah, it's bloody uncomfortable, but the other side of it is so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you mind like sharing like some of the things that made you feel like you weren't alive, and also what actually made you feel alive? Like just share what you can.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
What you're comfortable with.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think so. I had this sense when I was going through this last year that I was living someone else's life. And I'd heard that idea, but I hadn't really felt it fully. And it was almost like at the age of 30, I felt like my life was already over. I felt like I'd ticked a lot of the boxes, or I was about to tick a lot of the boxes that I was meant to. And the things that I truly wanted to do, I hadn't been talking about exploring or had the courage to actually go and do. And the one of the confronting realizations I had within that was, oh, I'm fully responsible for my life. And then it's like, oh shit, I'm fully responsible for my life.
Oh yeah, you are.
And yeah. And so I get to choose whatever I want to do. And yes, there are different things in the way of me fully choosing myself. But that's really what it came down to, was if I fully chose myself, fully chose who I wanted to be, what that little inner voice was saying around like, hey, go do this and maybe don't do that. That was a really scary prospect because it meant going against the grain of my friendship group. You know, most of my friends are now getting married and having kids and buying houses. And I'm in this weird situation of going, well, that does not feel right for me. But it's so different. And that's why it's been awesome to find a community of people that are also in the same boat as well.
Yes.
So yeah, it was just not expressing myself fully within my relationships.
Yeah.
Even like, you know, I've since had one or two partners and explored things with them. And they've asked me this really basic question, you know, this woman looking at me, beautiful, going, what do you want? And I'm going, I don't know. And that's been a really interesting last part of this journey of going, well, actually, all I want right now is to want. I don't know what I want, but I know I want to want something. And I know that whatever it is, I want to want it enough that I'm willing to die for it.
Yeah.
And I want to want it enough that in relationship, I'm willing to communicate it, have boundaries around it, have standards around it. And when I look into my partner's eyes, be able to say to her, this is a non-negotiable for me. And we can navigate this together, or this isn't going to work. And I don't say that to be harsh. It's more just that I want to know who I am and what I want, and I want to be able to communicate that. But just for so many years, I hadn't even created the space for myself to allow my needs to be worthy and to express them and to ask for them to be met. So that was part of it. And then it's just been a whole bunch of other things like wearing clothes I actually want to wear,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
you know,
Awesome.
going to parties that I actually want to go to, whatever that is, as weird and quirky as it might be, giving myself permission to explore the things I really love.
Hey, just quickly, this is so, so very, very cool. So just before this podcast episode, the internet went down and it was going to be down for a few days. It decided that they were going to do some maintenance, right? So I was like, holy crap, I had podcast episodes, coaching, organized that I needed to do via Zoom, all kinds of things. And I was like, what am I going to do? And then I remembered I've got an off-grid caravan and I've actually got internet set up on that via out there internet. Basically, so you can take your caravan to remote places and be able to use your internet. And I was like, oh my goodness, I wonder if I could use this, right? So I rang them and they said, absolutely, you can. So all I needed to do, I had an old USB modem. So I pulled the SIM card out of that and then put it into the out there internet setup. And I'll actually show you a picture on this, what it looks like. And it's so cool. And I just put it in there, and no joke, the reception that I had on the little USB modem, which wasn't going to handle the podcast, right? All my coaching, it went from like 1 and hardly getting 2 bars, even the 1 was like flashing on and off, right? To 5 bars using out their internet, right? The antenna and the setup, it just boosts the internet so quickly. And yeah, I couldn't believe the speeds. I ran speed tests on it and everything, right, just to make sure. And it was so incredible. So I was able to do my coaching. I was able to do today's podcast episode. Out there, internet, I love you. You are absolutely kick-ass. Thank you so much. Back to the podcast. And, like what I see in the men that I coach is like right from an early age, it's so interesting, like, and we are all like this, men and women too, but specifically with the men that I coach, I'm finding with from an early age they are taught that you need to have your shit together, so to speak, and you've got to be able to make sure that you're the provider and you're this and you're that, and by this age you want to be set up financially so that you can get married and have kids, and then when you do that, it's all downhill from there. Like you give up all your adventure and your creativity, and when you're slowly going to be, sorry, that was a fly flying past. There's and slowly
Okay.
and slowly you're going to, just be like, badgered to death by your missus, and and the kids are going to be ungrateful for you. You're going to be used up like an ATM. There's all this stuff, right? And that's a lot of pressure for young boys and teenagers and young men in general, just to see, right, that is this all life is about, and this is what I have to fit into. And and I mean, and I'm finding, because a lot of the guys that do come to me for coaching have separated. They've gone through relationship separations, or something huge has happened, like in their business or work, and they're transitioning out of that and just finding themselves lost with no direction. Their identity has been based on this, whatever it was, situation that they're in. And now all of a sudden that's gone, and they're so depressed. They feel like who they were as a man is just disappeared, and now they're trying to figure themselves out just as a human, as a man, like because they've been driven to be something that they never really felt necessarily congruent with, and now they've got this freedom, and it's terrifying because there's no control there, right? And so there's a lot of work that goes in. I have to admit, I am pretty good at fast tracking it for them because I've done the process with them over and over again. And so I love seeing men thrive, and I truly believe that men can be, in relationships, if they choose to be, if they find a partner that's. I think it's always good to have your own personal purposes in life, and also to be able to share a purpose. as well, you know, like, or to at least be on the same track with, you know, where you're heading together as well. But and to be supportive of each other's purpose in regards to the creativity around that and the adventure that you bring to that as well. And yeah, and I just see so many men just in this direction of stuckness, and just, yeah, and just not living purposeful lives. And when I do talk to them, they thought that purpose was a career. and and I go, purpose is whatever you want it to be. Like, this is your life. You get to create it, right? We are creators of our own lives, as you were saying before, and you get to take responsibility for how you want to live your life, and how you want to be congruent to your inner compass, so to speak. If you know what your core values are, and what makes you feel epic in your life, and you start operating from that, it's a lot easier to set boundaries. It's a lot easier to go yes, no to this, that, because you know who you are inside yourself, and you could get to change that along the way, right? Because just because that's great for now doesn't mean it's going to be great for you 3 years or 2 years or even a year from now, because we're all evolving. And when you are very purpose-based and operating from what's important to you and what truly drives your soul, it's just the momentum that it creates. There's so much personal growth that goes along with that. Of course you're going to be different in a year, right? So, and yeah, so don't beat yourself up about that either, right? There's just, I love working with men. It's so exciting, and I love the work that you're doing, and I love that you're giving, you're kind of breaking the cycle of what, you know, boys and teens and men are seeing, right, in what's possible for them, like, as they continue their life. Like, they don't have to just settle for what's the perceived expectation of them.
Well said.
That was a very long.
That was awesome. No,
Yeah.
that was great. I think it's important that we're walking I mean, I think we are all walking the path of life itself. It's just important that, especially when we're working with people around this work, that we've got integrity to it as well, and we're also exploring it ourselves, and we're testing things. You know, all of what I've shared so far is stuff that I've explored myself, and then is what I teach men in my coaching also, and also through the Man Cave program. So I think, like, the thing I got back to is, and this, I think this hopefully be a question that appeals or feels familiar to some of the guys that are listening, is like, I just wanted to get back to a place where I could fully trust myself no matter what happened. And not just trust myself, that I unconditionally loved myself no matter what happens. And I've been doing a bit of work around, you know, parts of me, internal family systems kind of work. And one of the first parts of me that I spoke to was Mr. Control and Mr. Judgment.
Yeah.
Two parts that were very much there to keep me from doing the wrong thing, losing control. And then if I didn't get it right, I get lots of judgment. And then this part of me would just kick off. And it sometimes would be days until I realized what was happening. And I'd just be in this chamber of just judgment, as Mr. Judgment was just like tearing me to shreds. Now, as I've been doing more and more work and sort of talking to Mr. Judgment and telling him how much I love him and I'm just here for him no matter what happens, now we're like best mates. And he comes to me with information and guidance. He's like, hey man, you should probably look out for this. I'm like, thanks, dude. I love you. And no matter what happens, I'm here. And that's changed my life as well. Like, doing some of that deeper healing work and connecting back to my body and really treating my body with love, respect, and care. And yeah, you're right. Like, I think I had a really lucky chance the other week to meet Esther Perel, who's an amazing coach around relationships and
Yes.
intimacy, and went to an event, and I got the chance to ask her a question. And I thought to myself, well, what's the one question? I was like, here you go, Matt. You got this one opportunity to ask Esther Perel a question.
Yeah.
This might be the only time in your life. What's it going to be? I just said to her, I said, you know, I feel like the landscape for men and masculinity has changed a lot in the last 10 years. What's your one piece of advice, somewhat selfishly, to men in the 21st century around relationships and how they should show up in their life? And her answer was really interesting. She basically said, look, the last 50 years, women have been working through their identity and what it means to be a woman. We've had things like birth control and the third wave feminism movement, and that's really shifted things for women. But we haven't really had that much time for men. It's only been really 10 years of masculinity being under the radar and being challenged. And they all connect together. So until we redefine femininity, we can't redefine masculinity and vice versa. And so her response was, unfortunately, right now, masculinity is very hard to earn and very easy to lose. And until the fragility of masculinity and having to earn it is removed from our understanding of what it means to be a man, men are going to be afraid of each other, and men are going to be afraid of not being man enough in their own life. And so my thought then was, well, how do we change that? And we didn't get a chance to ask that. I didn't get a chance to ask her that part, but I've been sitting on it ever since. And I think the one simplest answer I have right now is we just need more men that are choosing themselves, that are choosing to look after themselves, that are choosing to look after each other as well, to see each other as a community of men, not in competition with other men. And then from there, then we can start to see examples and role models and stories of what it looks like to challenge some of the narratives we have been living into that aren't serving us. And then guess what? Women get to enjoy the other side of that. And all of us get to enjoy the other side of it, because the unfortunate element of patriarchy and masculinity and femininity is it impacts all of us. And so, the more that we are heteronormative, the more that we don't get to express ourselves sexually fully, the more that we are gender, prescriptive around, binary nature, the less that we get to express ourselves through the clothes we wear. There's lots of things. But this starts to really challenge some of the social foundations that we've built on. And that's threatening to a lot of people. So, as you can probably tell, I love talking about this stuff, and it can get really big, but it can also get really practical really quickly as well. So
I
yeah, it really
totally
depends.
agree. And I love what she said. I guess, like, I have sort of like little, I guess, mantras when people say to me, what, as a woman, why are you so passionate about supporting men? And I said, because I want men to feel safe within themselves and to trust themselves, like you were saying. But I love helping men empower themselves, right? Because when a man feels safe, because we hear so many people saying, well, men are pigs, men are this, men are that, you know what I mean? Men are aggressive, they do all this stuff, and the bad behavior. And I said, yeah, but I'm not making excuses for bad behavior. But I said, a man will only behave in a fear-based way when he's feeling fear himself, right? That's, he's going to take those actions based on feeling insecure and fear and afraid. So how do we help men feel safe within themselves? Because when men feel safe, then women get to feel safe, children get to feel safe, and we're helping a man thrive. And when a man is, purposefully living his life, and he values and appreciates himself and has self-compassion towards himself, as well as, and he's also then more secure, right, to open up with other blokes and have more meaningful connections with other people, which straight away is going to help as well. And he sees himself in a whole new perspective and light, right? And it's just like, I love coaching men, if you didn't tell.
Yeah.
So much. And yeah, and I even found it a bit of a struggle for myself when I moved into more specifically coaching men. I had a lot of, especially in the entrepreneurial world, women they weren't impressed with me. Like, all of a sudden I'd taken sides, and I said, if only you could spend a couple of hours with me, like as a fly on the wall in a coaching session, you would have so much compassion for men and have such a greater understanding of what they're actually going through, that you would say, wow, I get this now, right? I get how this can help women by doing this. And so I've been lucky enough to be helping men my whole life and supporting men my whole life and being their vault. So, well, most of my life, not my whole life, and it truly is an honor, and it's just super exciting. And so when I saw the work that you guys were doing, I was like, this is very cool, because, you know, if the work that I'm doing is more sort of like, you know, men are usually around about 30, early 30s to anywhere up to 60 years old, right? And they've just like found themselves in these situations where they felt like the rug's been pulled out from underneath them and just have no idea how to handle it, because they don't have those skills. And now all of a sudden they've got to create this new life and they don't even know what that looks like, where you get to help, you know, teens like say, guess what? This is your opportunity to create the most wonderful life for yourself and get to do it now, right? And then they just keep growing with that and they have all those incredible skills that, you know, so no matter what happens in life, they're going to be able to have their own back and feel safe in that. Even when they are feeling fear, they know how strong they are within themselves and that they've got this, right? And that they can help support others as well and ask for help and be open to ask for help too.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to say, while we're on the topic of your coaching, like from the men that you've helped, just thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you for deciding to support men in your life and those around you, because um, I have no doubt that having a safe female and woman to explore the stuff they're exploring with you is really, really healing. And I've done a little bit of work with women as well, both having space held for me and also holding space for them. And I think it's a really important part of the way we move forwards as well. So yeah, just thanks, Mandy, for all the work you've done
Oh,
in
thank
supporting the
you.
men you have supported.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Mm.
And there is one more question that I want to ask you. Like when you like see like what's moving forward for you, right? In your life personally or with the man cave, whatever, what are some things that you would like really like to bring more of into your life and achieve more of? You know, it could be whether that's personal growth or just obstacles that you want to overcome.
Yeah. Oh, good question. Um, there's a few things. I think like the way I separate this out, there's sort of the relationship I have with myself and the relationship I have with the world, the people around me. So the relationship I have with myself, I'm really working on just deepening my trust and
Yeah.
deepening my trust in myself that no matter what happens, I will have myself. Um, and within that, like radical self-acceptance and radical, not judging myself. And then also really, it's been fascinating just creating more time for myself. I used to be someone that would run around like a crazy person, trying to meet everyone else's needs around me before my own. And I didn't even know what my own needs were. So I'm now at the point where I'm really slowing down a lot in my life, slowing down a lot in my body, going, what do I actually need right now? What does my body need? What do I need? And creating boundaries and going, oh, I'm actually worthy of doing that for myself, and that's okay. So there's that, and there's a whole raft of things. I used to, like I said before, I used to do the Ironman triathlons and Everest base camps and Vipassana meditation retreats and ridiculous things that I look back on now and go, that was a lot of fun, but every finish line I got to, I felt a little bit empty still. Still
Yes.
wasn't enough there. So it's like, it's going to sound a bit lame maybe to some people, but the relationship with myself that I'm working on is unconditionally loving myself no matter what happens,
Yeah.
and really believing that. And I really believe that if that's the foundation I'm building from, then my life's going to change organically because of that.
Yes.
And whatever comes into my life is meant to be, and whatever leaves is also meant to be, which again can sound really esoteric, but for me, it's been this big lesson of just letting go and noticing parts of me like grab things where they're just trying to grab certainty and control of the future. I'm like, just put it down. They're like, God, but I put it down.
Yeah.
And then the result of that is, it's not, and this is very much the masculine mindset. Should I do X or Y? Well, what I've discovered is it's not X or Y. It's actually, well, what's the third option that I'm not even exploring? We're not existing in this binary anymore of going left or right. the third option is the one that I hadn't even thought about. The third option is the one that maybe my gut is saying to do, but is outside the script of what I've been told I should do.
Yeah.
And then that's when things have come into my life. That's when people have come into my life, and I just go, just going to trust this is happening because something. And then I slow down enough, and I just see the next bit drop in. So the next 12 months, to get more practical for you, and for those people that enjoy the practical side, it's really expanding Man Cave around the world, around Australia and the world, and really capturing what we're doing in a way that can scale into more communities, partnering with other organizations, other leaders in the field. I saw you chatted to Mikey D a few months ago. He's doing amazing work with Good Blokes, and there's Anna's work through the Rites of Passage Institute, and we want to do more work with him. So there's that sort of space, and I really want to move into more of facilitating retreats and programs through those avenues as well, while growing Man Cave. And then the interesting thing for me is I'm at a life stage where, like I said, all my friends are getting married, and I'm not in a relationship. And at some point, I'd love to be, but I've recognized that until my relationship with myself is really strong and solid, I'm never going to feel like I'm enough, even in the presence of a partner. So, yeah, I'm sort of just open hand at the moment, waiting to see what comes into my life. And eventually, I would love to own a retreat property. One part of it will be called the Center for Recovering Corporates, where anyone that's burnt out from corporate can come and recover and rejuvenate. And there's a few other projects around coaching people and through my business, Another Way to Live, which is basically that question I explored. I was like, there's got to be another way to live. Like, there's got to be another way to do this, for people that are exploring that same question. And yeah, looking at running some events and experiences that are a bit left of field, that people, where we get to have the kinds of conversations we really want to have in our everyday life, but there's not the right space for it as adults. So there's a few things in the works at the moment. Yeah, that's my long answer.
Well, I love that answer. And I think, when you give yourself permission to think outside of the box, because you can tell that you're very comfortable within yourself, right? And when you're able to calm your nervous system down a little bit and just like be more present, you get more clarity, right? You're more grounded, you have more clarity, more creativity, and then you're able to open yourself up to asking yourself questions and getting those answers. Because when you're in a manic state of mind, you're pretty much just going to be beating yourself up when you ask yourself questions, right? It's not going to be helpful feedback. So when you're nice and
exactly.
yeah. So when you're not nice and calm and grounded, you get that creativity back, which is something that as kids we tend to lose, right? And that playfulness and that wonderment, where as adults, if you can tap back into that, like it opens avenues for you everywhere. And that's incredibly exciting. I love your answer. That is so awesome.
Could I add one thing, Mandy? Thank you. There was just this, there's this, I don't know how to explain it. I'll have a crack, but there's this one question that really has been guiding me in different ways. It's just like, now what? And the way I relate to that is, okay, so I got the job. Like, now what? I got the girl. Well, now what? Like, there's a phrase that I got from an organization I've been doing some work with, which I love, which is like, when is a good time right now to just be happy, to be worthy, to be okay with what you've got? And it's like, there's just such a constant pursuit of more that we've internalized, that when it's really can often come from a place of, I'm not good enough, or I'm not enough. And it's this energetic pull, like you're pulling energy in to try and fill this hole, and there's never enough. And until you do enough of the personal work and you can slow that flow down and you go, actually, if I only had me, I'd be okay. And then you can start to reverse it and you can start to create and bring stuff to the world. But that's more challenging for some people than others. But it's just a question I asked myself. I was like, I got the thing. Well, now what? My dream car, right, last year was an Audi Q5. So my dream car is an Audi Q5. When I got an Audi Q5, I've made it. Got the family, got the whole dad thing going on, got my Audi Q5. And so I went online and I looked up on car sales, how much is an Audi Q5? And I realized I could sell my current car, I could save up a little bit of money, and I could buy the Audi Q5 in a couple of months. I was like, this is really funny, because say I go do that. In 3 months' time, I've got the Audi Q5. What's different? Like nothing. Just driving around a
Exactly.
different car.
That's true.
Like,
That's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So now what? Like, yeah, you got the thing. Like now what? And it's not to diminish. Like I think it's still important. We have goals and we're moving forwards and we've got intentions.
Yeah.
But I think there needs to be a balance of going, actually, I've got everything I need. And then the irony of that is you end up receiving way more than you ever thought you were going to.
So true. So true. I'm so glad that you added that on there. And that is gold right there. And I agree with that big time. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I've loved this. I could like talk to you for hours. Like
It's been great.
well, I did say it was conversational. And yeah, and it's a cool, by the way, if someone wants to reach out to you and message you, because
Yeah.
they've loved this conversation and they're
Yeah,
going,
yeah, yeah. No,
Matt, I resonated with you big time.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on Instagram, Matty D203. Also, if you prefer like a professional platform, you can LinkedIn me, Matthew Defina. Yeah, but follow me on Instagram. I love connecting with people on Instagram, and
Yeah.
like I said, I've got a few projects in the works on the side as well, and would love to have a chat. And yeah, it's been great connecting with you too. And thanks again for the work you're doing, and really want to honor you for making the choice you made
Thank
to
you.
support men. Yeah, I have no doubt it's having a positive impact.
Awesome.
And yeah, my like one bit for guys is like just do whatever you can just to get out of your head and out of this fear-based problem-solving mindset, which a lot of us guys are really stuck in, of trying to make sense of the past or trying to plan for the future. And once you start to do that, you can do that through just connecting back to your body, and that will bring up stuff that you may be surprised by. Certainly has for me. But through your body and through your connection to your body is going to be the way where you start to rebuild a connection to yourself, connection to your emotions, and where you're going to start to be able to experience things like joy and pleasure and happiness and the different emotions that we all really want in our lives. But just like the yin and the yang, the dark is only possible with the light, the light's only possible with the dark. So yeah, it's just a journey, right? It's just a journey. I know that word's overused a lot, but I feel like that just explains the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, that's so cool. Can you please keep me updated on what you're doing? Because like I would love to have you on again later on and just like see where you're up to and what adventures you're on and yeah, because this conversation's been super cool, but I'm also excited to see what's coming for you as well, right? Especially now that you're
Thanks,
in this
Mandy.
place, right? Because then it's like,
Yeah.
what else is possible? And that's super exciting.
Thanks. I mean, I've loved this as well. I'd love to stay in touch, and you can. I'd love to learn from you as well. Like, not just how you work with men in coaching, but also how you've built up your business and built up your community. You're obviously doing something really right.
Oh, thank you. Awesome.
Mm.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, thanks for jumping on with us today, everybody. And thanks to Matt for just being an absolute legend and, having this incredible conversation with us. And yeah, massive hugs, Matt. Hugs.
Thanks.
And to everyone else out there, thank you again. And I'll talk to you in the next episode. See you later.